Hello everyone, and welcome to Changeling Gaming. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to run Blood on the Clocktower. Blood on the Clocktower is a level 2 play-to-learn game designed by Stephen Medway and published by the Pandemonium Institute for 5 to 20 players plus a storyteller that takes on average 30 minutes to 2 hours to play. Blood on the Clocktower is a game run by a storyteller whose goal is to craft a memorable experience and challenge for the players participating in the town of Ravenswood Bluff. This video gets into the details of how to run a game of Blood on the Clocktower as a storyteller. If you are going to be a player, then watch this video here instead. Before diving into anything else, know this. The goal of the storyteller is to keep the game well balanced between good and evil. If the final vote is a nail-biter where only 3 to 4 players are left alive, then you've done your job exceptionally well. Setup. The very first step is to determine which script you are going to play. If this is your first time playing, we strongly recommend playing Trouble Brewing first, as the script is much more straightforward to understand for people who are new to Blood on the Clocktower. After some experience, feel free to try out the other scripts in the base game, Bad Moon Rising, and Sects and Violets. Take the town square board and a number of life clock tokens equal to the number of players, and place it somewhere it won't get knocked over, but where everyone can see it. Arrange the tokens to roughly match with the players' seats, and place some vote tokens in the middle for when players die. If there are any travelers among the players, then make sure they receive the gold-rimmed life clock tokens. We'll get into travelers after the core gameplay. Next, assemble the stand and grimoire with the 3 metal clasps holding the halves of the book together. Gather the components for the script you are about to play and set them inside the grimoire. Place the night order sheet on one side and place the reminder tokens, communication tiles, and death shrouds either inside or nearby. Ensure all the players are familiar with the rules, and if not, then either show them our video for players or read the rules sheet to them. If possible, have a veteran player read the rules instead so you can move on to the next setup step. Now is the most important phase of setting up, picking which characters are going to be present for this particular game. Count up to the number of players who are not travelers and reference the matching column. You'll be selecting that many townsfolk, outsiders, minions, and a demon. So if you are playing a 9-person game, there will be 5 townsfolk, 2 outsiders, a minion, and the demon. That said, there are various other characters that will affect this balance of characters, so try to make those selections first to simplify character selection. For instance, the Baron increases the number of outsiders in play by 2, meaning there will be 2 fewer townsfolk and 2 more outsiders. Some characters, like the Drunk, do not know they are the Drunk, and another townsfolk token has been placed in the bag instead to be the Drunk. Once these selections are complete, grab the reminder tokens for those characters in use. The characters who have these tokens have a leaf indicator at the top of their token. Grab these even for characters that might be falsified because they're, for instance, actually the Drunk. Throw all the character tokens into the bag, give it a shake, and then walk around the circle, letting every player take a single token and look at it, without revealing it to anyone else. Once everyone has taken a token and knows who they are, go back around and collect them, placing the tokens into the grimoire in the same order as the players, to know which player is which character. Prepare for the first night by placing the reminder tokens next to all the characters and the steps that will occur on the night order sheet. Also take a moment to determine what information will be provided on this first night to those players who receive predetermined information. For instance, deciding which 2 players the washerwoman is going to see and which of their roles you will reveal. Also, grab 3 character tokens that are not in play. These will be the bluffs that are available to the demon and evil team if they are able to share them with each other. Try to ensure that the bluffs that are given are believable, and also give the demon good cover under which to hide throughout the game if they are clever. How to play. There are 2 main phases to the game, the night phase and the day phase. During the night phase, everyone's eyes will be closed, and the storyteller will be moving around resolving the nighttime abilities. During the day phase, players will have an opportunity to move around and talk to each other, then vote and execute a player for any number of potential reasons. During the night phase, all the players will have their eyes closed. You will be moving around and tapping on players to wake them up, and either receive information or carry out some task as determined by their role. Encourage the players to have a conversation around a topic not related to the game initially, or all move a bit and make a little noise to help obscure your movements, and make sure you hit all parts of the circle. There are two main means for you to communicate: these phrase tokens and by certain specific gestures. There are tokens for indicating who the demon is, indicating who the minions are, telling the demon that the following characters are not in play, telling a player that their role has changed in combination with their new role token, telling a player who a player is in combination with that player's role token, telling a player they were selected by a particular character in combination with that character's role token, asking a player if they nominated someone today, or asking a player if they voted today. Tap a player twice in a respectful place to tell them to wake up. To tell a player to go to sleep, cover your eyes with your hand. To indicate yes, nod your head. To indicate no, shake your head. To indicate a player is good, give a thumbs up. To indicate a player is evil, give a thumbs down. To indicate a number, show that number with your fingers, or give a 0 if necessary. To indicate a specific player, or to confirm a selected player, point clearly to that player. If a character role must be revealed, then take that token from the grimoire and show it to the player until they confirm that they've seen it. The goal during the night phase is to be relatively efficient, so that players can continue with the core of the game, discussing with each other. The first night begins with waking the minions together and showing them who the demon player is, but not which demon they are playing as. Minions are not allowed to communicate at this time. Then, wake the demon after the minions go to sleep, and show them who the minion players are, but not their roles. Then, show the demon their 3 bluffs, character roles that are not in play this game. Put the demon to sleep. Continue waking players one at a time as per the order on the first night side of the script, carrying out their information or action, then putting them to sleep and moving on to the next character. You can use the reminder tokens next to the characters to remind you which characters to wake up. Also use the character reminder tokens to identify what has occurred so far. So for instance, when the poisoner targets a player, place the poisoned marker next to that player's character token to indicate that they are poisoned. Once the first night is complete, wait a few seconds so players don't know if they were the last character to act. Then wake all the players and allow them to start moving around and talking with the other players. Usually when this first night is complete, you as the storyteller are the first victim of the demon and have been hung upon the Clocktower of Ravenswood Bluff. The players will use this time to talk with each other and gather information between each other to make decisions during the execution phase, which comes next. In some scripts, certain characters will be able to come to you and either ask questions or gain information. Try to use this time to begin preparations for the next night, while also paying some attention to what is going on in the space, especially if there are roles you need to pay attention to. After a few minutes, gather the players back to their seats and announce that nominations for execution are open. Also, count out the number of living players and divide by 2, rounding up, and announce that number as the total number of votes needed for an execution today. So 9 living players means 5 votes are needed to execute, while 6 living players need only 3 votes. Allow the players to discuss for a bit, and anytime one player nominates another, begin by confirming aloud the nomination so everyone is clear on it. Then ask for them to make their accusation, and then ask the nominated player for their defense. Feel free to give a little extra time to the group, but then it's time to run the vote. To run the vote, stand in the middle of the circle and start with your hands pointed to the nominated player. Then rotate clockwise in a slow and consistent manner, counting any hands that are up as your hands are passing that player. Do not count the votes of players after you have passed them, even if they say they wanted their vote to count. It may be a bluff on their part. If the vote count meets or surpasses the vote threshold for the player count, let everyone know that player is up for execution, then reopen nominations. Subsequent nominations must surpass that vote count to replace the player up for execution. If the vote counts are tied, then neither player is up for execution. A later nomination must still surpass the tied vote counts. So if 2 players received 5 votes, neither would be up for execution, and later nominations need 6 or more to execute. Each time you run a vote, let the players know the count they need to tie the current vote count and the count needed to beat it. Only one player can be executed per day. An execution is not required, though. When it comes time to close out nominations for the day, be sure to give a last call for nominations and a countdown to the close. Then, carry out any execution on the block and announce whether the game is over or continuing before putting all the players to sleep. When a player dies, place a shroud token on their character to indicate they are dead. Also, flip their white life clock token to the purple side and place a vote token on top. That player immediately loses their character ability, though their character is not announced to the town. Dead players are not able to nominate other players to be executed, though they can still be nominated for execution. They still close their eyes at night and participate in conversations with the other players, trying to solve the puzzle of the game. Dead players also have one final vote they can use at any point in time. When they use it, remove it from their token on the town square board. Make any final preparations for the next night, and then proceed with that next night. This will include the first demon kills. When the next dawn comes, immediately as you wake players up, inform the town of who died before the players get a chance to. Continue rotating between night and day until the demon is killed and no other demons exist, or abilities that create demons, or abilities that keep the game going for evil, in which case, good wins. If, however, there are only 2 players left, not including travelers, then evil wins. If these win conditions are simultaneous, then the good win condition overrides and good wins. All members of a team, whether alive or dead, win together. There is one more common set of mechanics to discuss: being drunk and being poisoned. In both cases, the effect is straightforward. The player has no ability. This lasts only as long as the player is drunk or poisoned, and a player can be both drunk and poisoned simultaneously. This means that a player receives whatever information you want based on their usual ability, so false information can be given out to players. It is up to you to act as if the player is sober and healthy with their usual ability, even though it doesn't actually function. It is worth noting that timing matters significantly. So a one-time use power used while drunk or poisoned is lost, and when a player is made drunk or poisoned matters. If their ability is always active, then it returns as soon as they are no longer drunk or poisoned. But if they choose targets for their ability while drunk or poisoned, then those targets will not be affected when the power returns to the player. Also, it is the player who is affected. So even if they become a different character somehow, they are still drunk or poisoned. A few other details for you to know. Only tell players what information their characters say they learn. Most information stays secret in this game, but feel free to confirm how mechanics would work in specific situations if the players ask you about them. Be honest about how the rules of the game interact. If an ability does not say choose, then it is your choice as storyteller for who is affected. If a player tries to use their ability incorrectly, then simply shake your head and gesture for them to try again. For instance, if they need to choose a living player to target with their ability, but try to target a dead player. When a player changes characters, everything about their old character ends immediately. They gain any once per game or first night only abilities that character has access to, as well as any of the other abilities of that character. This also happens if the player is brought back from the dead or in a character swap. Note that this does not mean that a new minion or demon gets to learn who is on their team. That is exclusive to the first night. In addition, effects that are in square brackets on tokens affect setup, and therefore do not come into effect now. Note that execution is different from death, and a player can be executed even if dead. However, if a demon kills a dead player, then the town is not told that anyone died that night because that player was already dead. In all situations, except where a character's role explicitly says they believe to be another character, be honest with a player as to their current character and alignment. No amount of poison, being drunk, or information distortion like the Vortox should tell players they are a different character. But being a lunatic means they must believe, at least initially, that they are a different character and alignment. Finally, as a part of running the game, reinforce any bluffs that are being put forth by players by acting as if their abilities are operating as intended, but obviously without the effects actually coming to fruition. So, for instance, if a player stands up and claims to be the Slayer, play along and check the grimoire as they finalize their choice, before announcing that nothing happens. Travelers and Fabled. In games where there are more than 15 players, or if players arrive late or have to leave before the game ends, those players will play as travelers instead. There are suggested travelers for each script, though you can mix and match them if you want. So, if a player arrives late, they will be added to the town as a traveler. And if a player knows they probably won't be able to stay until the end of the game, then they can opt to play as a traveler instead and leave the circle when they have to. Travelers do not count as players for the win conditions at the end of the game, but they do count for execution vote thresholds. Travelers are also unique, in that every player gets to know which player is which traveler character. Because of this, you can allow players to choose which traveler they would like to play from the appropriate script sheet. Travelers should be made good about 2/3 of the time. Their alignment is not revealed to the other players, unless they are an evil player present at the top of the game. Otherwise, only an evil traveler arriving late learns the identity of the demon. The evil team does not know if a late traveler is on their team or not. To eliminate a traveler, an exile vote is held. Any player can call for the exile of a traveler, even dead players, though each traveler can only be potentially exiled once per day. Every player can vote, no matter if alive or dead, without costing any dead votes. A simple majority is necessary to exile the traveler, but it is a majority of all players at the table. Note that all abilities are suspended for this vote, so abilities that add votes don't work, or abilities that restrict a player's ability to vote normally. Once exiled, a traveler operates similarly to a dead player. They have a single dead vote and exist in the game like any other dead player. In addition, travelers cannot normally be affected by abilities that swap characters or change roles. They are fixed to their players. However, if you want to invite the chaos and the players don't mind, then you can go ahead. Fabled are modifiers that the storyteller might add to the game for any number of reasons. Anytime you add a Fabled to the game, explain what that Fabled does. These serve a variety of roles, but generally are present to help make up for various real-world gaps within the game, like making it easier for new players to participate in games, adding small changes to spice up a game with a large player count, or a small player count, or resolving disputes due to conflicting characters in a custom script. Check the Fabled and Travelers in the Fabled book for the details on which Fabled do what. Teensyville. If the player count is particularly low, then you can run Teensyville games, though with a few changes overall. The Trouble Brewing script works relatively well for these games, while Sects and Violets and Bad Moon Rising don't really work as well. That said, there are a multitude of Teensyville-specific scripts that are available on the Blood on the Clocktower website, link in the description. The biggest changes to note are that the minion and demon do not get to know each other, so they must each blindly try to win the game for their team on their own. And the demon does not receive 3 not-in-play characters to bluff as. Essentially, when running the first night, skip over the minion info and demon info sections. If you want clarification on anything, then check the rulebook for general rules. The books and each script are also excellent at providing examples of each character's power being used and the edge cases that are most common to arise. Finally, don't worry if you make a mistake. They are natural and will happen, especially in a game this big and complicated. It is not always necessary to correct false information or a mistake that has been made. Trying to correct a mistake can sometimes give away even more information than you intended it to. If you want to try and rectify this somewhat, in those moments where you get to decide what information a player is receiving, for instance because they are poisoned or drunk, or you are deciding who to kill, you can use those moments to try and swing the balance back to center. Though, ultimately, that is your goal anyways, since any game that comes down to 3 or 4 people alive desperately trying to figure out who to kill indicates you've done a good and memorable job. be sure to support your local game stores. For us, that is Board Game To Go, who offer over 2,000 games for rental within the Toronto area and many games for purchase. If you're curious about this game, check out the link in the description. If you have any questions about the game, feel free to post them in the comments below, or take a look to see if someone else has already answered it down there, and be sure to thank them if they have. If you want to learn more about what our ranking system means, then check out this video here. And if you want to learn how to play more games, check out our playlist here. Subscribe to learn when new videos come out. And remember, keep changing, keep gaming, have fun. Tip: trying to balance the information that good can gather and the misinformation evil can spread.